There was a young Jewish boy named David who grew up in a very religious Orthodox home, but he and his father, they were never really close. And as David got older, he and his father started to really grow apart. And David, he got a girlfriend who also was kind of growing apart from her family, also a Jewish girl. And together they decided they didn't want to really live such a religious life, and they just wanted to kind of get away from their families. And so David and her and his girlfriend, they decided that they're gonna go travel. So they leave home and they go on their way to travel the world, to see the world. And a couple years go by, and they're still traveling. And now they're in Asia, and they're really, they're really enjoying themselves and seeing the world. And it's been a long time since David has even spoken to his father. It's been a long time. And they're in India, seeing the beautiful India. And a man approaches David and his girlfriend, and he says, "You're David, right? From the such and such town where David was from." And David says, "Yeah. How do you know me?" And David said, "I knew you." And the man said to David, "I knew you as a little boy." And David said, "Oh yeah, you're such and such man. I remember you from many years ago when I used to live back home. I remember you." And the man looks at David, and he starts to be really sad. And David said, "What's wrong?" And the man says, "You don't know?" And David's like, "What don't I know? Just tell me already. What don't I know?" And the man looks at David, and he looks at the girlfriend, and then he back at David, and he says, "Your father passed away." And David, the face that I just made, that's David's response. He's shocked. He hasn't talked to his dad in years, and now he's finding out from a man that he used to know that his father passed away, and he hasn't talked in the years, and he feels so bad. So after they say goodbye to this man, David looks at his girlfriend, and he says, "We have to go to Israel. My father, he always wanted me to go to Israel. I need to go. We have to leave India right now, and we have to go to Israel tomorrow." And his girlfriend looks at him and says, "David, we both grew up religious. We both didn't like that way. We wanted to explore the world. We wanted to be secular. We didn't want that way of life. We're not going to Israel." And David looks at his girlfriend, and he says to his girlfriend, "Honey, I really need to do this. My father passed away. I want to pay respects. He was my father." And she looks at him. She looks at David, and she said, "Fine. We'll go 3 days, and then we're leaving." And David agrees with her. They'll go 3 days, and then that's it. So they go to Israel. They leave India. They go to Israel. David and his girlfriend, and they decide to go to the Western Wall. And David wants to say a prayer by the Western Wall. It's very famous that you go to the Western Wall, that it's such a holy place that God really hears and answers your prayers, even more so in that area because it's such a holy place. It's a wall that's used to surround the temple, the holy temple, and it's a very holy place to go. So David wants to go to the Western Wall, and he wants to specifically say his prayer there. So the girlfriend waits kind of by the side while David's praying, and he's saying to himself, to God, to his dad, he's saying, "Dad, I'm really sorry. You and I were never really close. We fought a lot, and now I don't even get to say goodbye. And I miss you. I'm really sorry. I don't know what else to say, Dad. I'm really sorry. If there's any way that you can give me a sign to show to show me that you forgive me. It would mean the world to me. And it's very famous that when Jews go to the Western Wall, they sometimes take a piece of paper and write something on the piece of paper of what they really want, a sincere prayer from their heart, and they put it into the cracks of the wall. And so that's what David does, and he puts in a piece of paper, and as he's doing so, another piece of paper falls out. And he's very curious. What does this other piece of paper think? Or say on it? He's thinking to himself, what does this other piece of paper say that someone else has written? He's debating, should I read it? Should I not read it? He decides he's going to read it. And he opens up the piece of paper, and this is what the paper says. Dear David, my son. And then it says the city from which they're from. So David realizes that this is a note that his own father put into the wall. I'm getting very sick. I'm not doing very well. I know throughout your life that we've never really been so close. And that we always disagreed about religion. My son, my dear David, I want you to know that I love you. I care about you. I always have and I always will. And no matter what happens to me, I'll always be with you. And I'll always love you. Love, Dad. And David can't believe this. He's here at the Western Wall, praying his heart out, feeling so much remorse for not having a better relationship with his dad, and now his dad's no longer alive. And he puts in his piece of paper in the wall, and a piece of paper happens to fall out, and it happens to be out of thousands and millions of pieces of paper. It happens to be the piece of paper that his own father wrote. He can't believe that the miracle that's in front of his eyes. It's amazing. And he says to his girlfriend, he goes gets his girlfriend. He says we can't leave. There's no way that we can leave. Look. He tells her what happened. Like this is literally a miracle. We need to come back to Judaism. And she says to him, David, we said 3 days, and we're going. We're not staying here. But he says, look, my dear, look. This is God telling me to come back to the religion. This is God telling me to be religious again. These types of things don't just happen. This is a miracle. And she said, David, you either choose me or you choose to be in Israel and stay here. But you can't have both. And he looks at her with tears rolling down his cheeks, and he says, I'm sorry, but I'm staying. And she said, fine. Goodbye. He was willing to give up that relationship, a girl that he loved, because he knew that it was his path to be here in Israel. But the story doesn't end there. So David, he slowly starts to learn, and he gets in touch with a rabbi in Israel, and this rabbi sets him up with a home, a place to live. And he moves his whole life to Israel, right? Like he'd been traveling the world. He was originally from America, and now he's living in Israel. And a couple more years go by, and he's become a real Talmud Chacham. He's become a real Torah scholar, very knowledgeable man. And the rabbi that's been helping him and inspiring him says, David, you're getting older. It's time for you to find a shidduch, to get married, to find your bashert, to find your soulmate. And he says to David, I want you to come after the service, and you will come for the Shabbat meal. And my wife and I think that there's a girl for you, and we're going to have her also at this meal. And we think that you guys will get along, and hopefully it'll be a good match. Are you willing to come? And David's very grateful. Of course, Rabbi. Of course, Rabbi, I'll come. I'd love to come. So the Friday night service comes, and it goes well. And David and the rabbi walk home to his house, to the rabbi's house, and they go to the meal. They walk into the door, and there's the wife of the rabbi, and there's a girl sitting next to the wife of the rabbi. And David can't believe his eyes. He starts to cry, and the rabbi says, "What's wrong?" And David turns to the rabbi, and he turns to the girl, and he turns to the rabbi's wife. And he can't speak. Because that girl, that was his girlfriend. That was the girl who just said to him a couple years ago, "Choose me or Israel." That was the girl that he loved. That was the girl that he traveled the world with. What is she doing here? He looks at her, he says, "What are you doing here?" And the rabbi and his wife are so confused, like, how do they know each other? And she said, "After I broke up with you, I was about to leave Israel when something inspired me inside my soul. And I decided to stay in Israel. And I haven't left Israel. And I met this Rebbitzin, I met this holy woman. And she inspired me, and I stayed. And here I am." And neither one of them could believe it. That God brought them back together. And they had their meal, and they realized that they really are meant for each other. And shortly afterwards, they got married. It's a remarkable true story that happened not long ago. So not only did this man David have this incredible experience and had this tremendous miracle happen, where his father, somehow the piece of paper fell out of the wall and exactly went to him out of anyone that it could have gone to. And not only did then he lose his girlfriend, but then it turns out that they both found their way back to Judaism, to being religious. They both stayed in Israel, and they both end up together in the end. It's an amazing, amazing story that when you truly pray for something with all your heart, first of all, right, in the first part of the story with his dad, he feels so much sorrow, he feels so much remorse for what he's done. When you pray with that broken heart, God answers you and shows you a sign and gives you a miracle. And then in regards to his girlfriend, he did the right thing. His girlfriend didn't want him to stay, and he knew that he needed to stay. He did the right, even though he loved her, he broke up with her because he knew it was the right thing to do. But it was hard because he loved her. But in the end, God made it work out, that they got to be together, and that they got to have a beautiful marriage together. So sometimes we have a test of a really hard thing, but by doing the right thing, eventually in the end, everything truly does work out for the best. And may David and his wife, may they continue to have a beautiful marriage, with lots of love, children, grandchildren, and only good things. And maybe learn from them to always come back to our roots, no matter where we are in the world or who we are. Let's come back to Yiddishkeit. Let's come back to the true emes, and let's be the best people that we can be.